Good evening. Come on in. Come on in. Good evening. How's everybody doing? Come on in. Good evening, everybody. Good evening to you that are watching us via YouTube. Good evening, Facebook, and good evening, Instagram. Hope you guys have had a wonderful, wonderful day today. Um, Thank you guys for tuning in and being so faithful about tuning in to What's on Your Mind. I am your host, Benita. And so tonight we're going to continue our discussion as I continue to share my journey with you, being that it is National Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. I decided to go ahead and take you along with me on my journey dealing with depression, anxiety, and suicide attempts. It's a very scary subject to open up and talk about because you don't really know how people are going to, perceive you or receive you after you share such personal information. But given the times that we're in and looking at the situations that we've been seeing, particularly from a Christian perspective, and the things that we're seeing going on, and the number of pastors that we're seeing committing suicide, I'm just going to check it up to the wind and tell my story, and let the chips kind of fall where they may. My prayer is that someone will hear my story, someone will see this live or watch the replay or playback, whatever it's called, and hopefully something I say will encourage someone else to come forward and tell their story, or no, or even know that they're not alone. A lot of times it's just not for people, because it is such a sensitive, private issue when you start talking about mental illness and depression and anxiety and suicide attempts. When you start talking about all of that, when I say we, I mean Black folks in particular, and then we as pastors, we don't like to get into all of that because we don't want anyone to actually know that we have been to that dark place. We have gone there and been there, done that. We don't really want nobody to know all of that about us. So if we can, we'll just like ride it out to where you guys think that, always all you see is the glitz and the glamour of ministry, the glitz and glamour of being a pastor, and what everything that comes along with that. But we very rarely or very seldom will say, hey, you guys come behind the curtains with us. Let us show you what really goes on. Let us show you what happens when the lines have died down. There's nobody saying preach, pastor, when there's nobody saying go ahead, man of God, go ahead, woman of God. It's very rare that you'll get invited into a behind the scenes life of a pastor or apostle or pastor, bishop, or what have you. It's very rare, particularly in the Black community, in the Black church, that you will get an all access pass to see what really goes on. Like I said, once the crowd has died down, once, the line has subsided, after we're done preaching and laying hands on people and all of that, There's always a line of people waiting to greet us, but what happens when we get back to our homes? What happens when we get back to our hotels and there's no lines there? There are no cameras there. There's nobody asking for an autograph there. There's nobody asking to take a selfie with you there. You know what I'm saying? I'm an author, so I'm signing books and giving autographs all the time. And so what happens when when I walk in the house, nobody and say, hey mom, can I have your autograph? Nobody's asking me, hey Nana, can I have your autograph? What goes on with us when we're behind closed doors, when we're in the safety of our homes, heck, sometimes even the safety of our cars? By the time we get off the parking lot, there's something that happens when you are at a certain level of ministry. It's something that happens to you that the crowd does not see, that the people does not see, that we don't necessarily talk about, in our day-to-day. We're doing lives, we're doing a lot of different stuff. We have interviews, all of that, but we very rarely will talk about what goes on behind the scene, behind the closed doors, and I'm not one for just kind of, putting it all on the table, if you will, but I am one for being honest, and I see so many people now just in so much of a hurry to get the microphone, in so much of a hurry to get in the limelight, so much of a hurry to be on certain platforms, to hobnob with certain people. But can I tell you guys something? It's good when it's good, okay? But you still have to deal with real life situations. Again, when the crowd has died down, when everybody disperses and goes home, when you got to go back to your hotel and make the right decision, whether or not you go back to your hotel alone, y'all ain't gonna say nothing. Those are decisions that have to be made after the crowd has died down, after the hype has died down, after the accolades are no longer coming, after the autographs have stopped, after all of that has died down and simmered down. Now you're in a position where you have to make a conscious decision. How am I going to deal with my loneliness? How am I going to deal with my dark place? How am I going to deal with my personal issues? You've laid hands on hundreds, sometimes thousands of people within the time of your ministry, and then sometimes you have to go back undone. You have to go back with your prayers unanswered. You have to go back, wondering, when is God going to hear you? You're going to have to go back wondering who's going to give you a word. You have to go back wondering who's going to lay hands on you. After you get through ministry, you're always left to wonder, okay, now I need somebody to pour into me. I need somebody to minister to me. And so it is quite often times that as pastors, we find ourselves in these dark places when there is no one around, and lonely. It's not the same as being alone, because most of the time we're not alone, but we do feel lonely. Did y'all catch that? Most of the times it's not that we are alone, it's that we feel lonely, because what happens, especially if you're prophetic, okay? So if you're prophetic, what happens is you're always hearing so much. You're hearing so much and you're seeing so much in the spirit. Some of it makes sense to you. Some of it makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. And then some of it you got to figure out, okay, is this God? Is this me? Like, what's going on here? Or when God does speak to you, when God does show you something, you got to figure out, am I supposed to hold this? Is this something I'm supposed to pray about? Is this something I'm supposed to share with somebody? Is this something I'm supposed to tell an individual? Is this something for me to go to a pastor or tell them? Is this something for me to put out to the world? So when you're prophetic, you have a lot that goes on in your mind, in your spirit. And so often, quite often, you got to know how to categorize what you hear and what you see when you are prophetic. And again, you can prophesy to a whole room of people and then go back to your hotel room or go back to your home or wherever you are, and in your mind you're thinking, okay, God bless, I'm glad God you used me to bless all of those people, but then you find yourself constantly looking for that person who's going to speak a word to you. And most of the time, and you guys know, some of you pastors and prophets and apostles that are on the line, God bless you, Apostle Shockley. Some of you can give a witness to what I'm about to say. A lot of times when they do prophesy to us, it's something kind of generic. It's like, oh, woman of God, God told me to tell you to hold on. He's going to bless you. God saw your tears. That's kind of generic. To me, that's a generic prophecy. I call that a generic prophecy. Tell me something specifically that God said specifically for me. And so when we do finally get a word, it's normally a generic word, something you could have just told anybody. But it's very rare when you are prophetic, when you are a pastor and you're going and you're going and you're going and you're serving and you're serving and you're doing and you're pouring out. It's very rare. It's very rare that you will get a specific, I'm talking about a specific, direct prophetic word for yourself and your particular situations. I'll say it again. Most of the time, the words that we do get, they're kind of generic in nature. Some, such as like, oh, God heard your cry. Don't worry, just hold on. Help is on the way. God saw your tears in the midnight hour. God told me to tell you He's going to turn that situation around. And then they'll ask you something. Do you know what situation I'm talking about? And we're standing like, which one? Well, somebody like me, I'll be like, yeah, I know what you're talking about, but it's a few of them, which one specifically is God working on now, and so that's just my thinking because I am prophetic, so when we are prophetic and we're pouring out and we've done all of these good deeds, we've done all of these things, we've obeyed the Lord, we've obeyed the voice of the Lord, and then we have to go home to that silent place. We go back to our hotels to that silent place, and there is no one there to minister back to us. That causes, you can go from this high place to this low place in a matter of seconds, in a matter of minutes. And listen, I want you guys to understand that is not a demonic attack on you, because I've heard a lot of people say this, the devil attacked me soon as service was over. Well, this is what I want to ask you. If you are that anointed during a service and you are that anointed during ministry time, how in the world, listen to what you're saying, how in the world would God then put His Spirit on you, put His Spirit in you so that you can do what He called you to do? And then as soon as you're done doing His bidding, he removes His hand of protection. The God I serve is not, He doesn't operate like that. So here's what I want you to understand. It's not a matter of that the enemy attacks us when we get back to our hotels or when we get back to our homes or what have you. What happens is psychologically, and medically. Now, I'm not going to try to get too deep into the medical side of it because I'm not a medical doctor. And so some stuff you need to go to your doctor and get these answers. But listen, I can speak on what I've been through. I can speak on what I know. I can speak on what I study, and I can speak on what is true, what I've seen, what I've experienced, what I go through. Okay. That I can speak on. All right, so here we go. So what happens is sometimes it's more of a psychological battle than it is spiritual, and it's not always has to do with the enemy or God or the devil or good or evil. Sometimes it just is what it is. It's almost like doing a job really well, and then you're looking around, everybody saying, oh, that was a good message. Oh, I really enjoyed you. Oh, that was just what I needed. Oh, thank you. Praise God. Da, 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 da. You might even get a really good honorarium and all of that. But when you get back to wherever you got to go to, it's something that happens within us. It's something deep. It's something deep that almost feel like, well, did I do everything God told me to do? Did I say everything God told me to say? I hope I was a blessing to the people. It's a psychological battle that we go through. But because most of us don't know that, what we'll say is, as soon as we got back to the hotel, or as soon as we got back to our homes or what have you, we'll start thinking that the enemy attacked us, and that's how come we can go through have these powerful services and then be right back at this low place again and feeling like we're alone and feeling like we're kind of in that dark place. That is not a spirit. Sometimes it's a psychological battle that we need to discuss. We got to get a handle on the psychological part of ministry, because that's where we're seeing a lot of preachers experiencing depression and anxiety. But because we have been so prone to call everything a spirit, we don't want to deal with the fact that this could be depression. This could be performance anxiety. It's just like you would have it on your job. If there's a bid you have to get in, if there are deadlines. I'm an author, so I work against the clock all the time. So if there are contracts that need to be signed by a specific date or time, or anything, if there are legal issues that has to be handled in a certain amount of time or what have you, you develop performance anxiety. I know I do. Okay. So it's the same in ministry. It's the same in ministry. The difference is it's at a different level, because when you're dealing with secular work, it does not involve people's soul. It doesn't involve their actually life. Now, it might involve their livelihood when you're talking about contracts and negotiations and all of that kind of stuff. Now, then you might be talking about somebody's livelihood. But ministry, we're talking about people's lives. We're talking about people's souls. That is a heavy burden. That's a heavy burden for any individual to carry. And so what happens is, when we are prophetic, when we are in ministry, we do develop, if we're honest, we do develop performance anxiety. Performance anxiety then can very well lead us to depression, because we're always second guessing if we did well enough, if God is pleased enough. And listen, we can see the crowd get hyped up. We can see all of that. People will say, good job. I really needed that. All of the players can be lined up, but something within us still feels, when we leave there, we still feel inadequate. We still, unless you just really have this arrogant spirit about yourself, most of us, when we're done ministry and we have ministered on that high level, and we know we have, not only made an impact in people's life, but we know we have done damage to the kingdom of darkness as well. When we get back to where we have to get quiet and sit in what we, experienced through the night, the first thing we want to be careful of, we're always careful, I know I am, and some of you will attest to this as well. The one thing we're always careful of, we want to make sure we don't get none of God's glory. We know. So when people say, oh, God bless you, you did such a good job, first thing we say, oh, to God be the glory. We want to make sure it's something in us that's afraid to allow people to put us on the pedestal. I know I am, to put us on this pedestal. Why we have gotten so afraid? Because we have seen how the mighty fall. We see it. We see it every day. We have seen it. We're constantly seeing it. We're seeing it right now in modern day times. And it's because we're not honest. We're just not honest about things. We just want everybody to think, oh, I'm blessed and highly favored. God is good, and, I'm good, you good, everybody good. And that's not always the case. There are times that we really go through these low places and these dark places, these moments of, God, where are you? And those are the points that led me to where I was. I often share that I started in ministry at age 14. So at age 14, I was, at that time, my parents were AME, so at 14, you go where your parents go. So I was 14, and so I was put into leadership training at 14 years old. So I was voted as secretary for the youth department. So in the AME church, you have districts, and I was in the southeastern district. Okay, so in the Eastern District, we had 3 churches in that one area. So it was like a triangle. So we had 3 churches right there. So I was the secretary at 14 now. I was the secretary for all 3 churches' youth department. So that means that when it was time to do quarterly rounds at 14, I was making my rounds to go make sure each youth department was doing what they were supposed to be doing. So that was at 14. So what happened was, and I fell in love with the church then. I absolutely fell in love with the church. And so by the time I was 15, now I did not know this at first, but I found out later that I was being groomed to be one of the bishop's son's future wife. All right. Well, I didn't like him. I knew him, but I didn't like him. So I started dating somebody else once I got in high school. Long story tolerable. So at 15, 16, I wound up getting pregnant. So when they found out I was pregnant, the head of the youth department came to my house, when my parents was not home. And she put me out the church. And when she came to the door, I just cracked the door a little bit, because I had just a little pudgy stomach. And she says, well, open the door, sweetheart. I already heard the news. I'm not coming to bother you. I just came to pick up all the books and the records and stuff. So I was like, okay. And she didn't talk to me. She didn't, tell me that, God still loved me. She didn't do any of that. She was just like, all right, I'll see you later. And I was like, I felt like God himself had put me out. That's how I felt. I felt like I had been put out the church by God himself. And because she left me in such a state, immediately the spirit of abandonment came on me. So at 16, now I'm feeling like the church has abandoned me. I'm feeling like God has abandoned me, but I'm still so in love with what I was doing. I'm so in love with God. I'm so in love with the church, but church has put me out. She never said, well, when you have your baby, come on back. She never said, we understand, we forgive you. You're not the first one. She never made me feel any kind of way other than as if I had totally displeased God, And so when she left, my parents finally came home. So I told my parents what happened. And funny thing about it, that following week, the deacon would come. That's when the deacons would come around and collect your money if you didn't show up for church Sunday. That following week, they would come to your house and get your dues. They called them dues back then. They would come get your dues, which was really your tithe and offering. They would come to your house and get your money. And so my dad had retired from the military, and he had messed up his knees. And so my dad, even though he didn't go to church regularly, he would send his money. Okay. So when they would come around, he was a really big giver. Well, after they put me out, they came back to the house to get his money. My dad was like, man, you guys came here and put my daughter out church while we were not home. He was like, you don't get away from my door. You're going to get this hot leg and you know what, so my dad stopped giving his money to the church because they put me out, So after I had my daughter, my oldest daughter, that you guys often hear me talk about, died suddenly last year. After I had my oldest daughter, I didn't go back to church for a while. So now I'm 16. I go back to school. I finish school on time. I graduate on time with my class. When I tried to go back to school at that time, I went to a predominantly white school. And so they were trying to give me a hard time because, when the white girls would get pregnant, they would go to this home and have their kids and come back, and act like their babies were their sisters and brothers. We had our children and we raised our children no matter how young we had them. So well, what happened was the church we started going to after we left the AME church, my pastor um my pastor got with the commissioner, and they with my parents and all of that, and I got back in school, graduated on time with my class, didn't miss a beat, and so that was a major accomplishment for me to finish school, graduate on time with a baby. Still had not been, in my mind, restored back to the church, because no one still had come back to me and said, God loves you, even though you had this baby or what have you. No one still was talking to me about anything God related, if you will. And I knew I wanted to be back in church. I wanted to serve because I truly love serving. And so it was at that point, it was early in my life, I started to develop uh, this secret abandonment, if you will, feeling abandoned, not just by the church, but sometimes like, God, why would you let them do this to me? Sometimes I would feel like God had abandoned me, like God allowed them to do that to me, and he didn't say anything. He didn't protect me. So that started with me really, really early. And so I go on, and the first person that came along and said to me, I'm 19 now, just graduated high school. Um, so I graduate high school, and then I'm 19. And the first person that comes along, now my daughter's father, he was Baptist, and I was AME. So you guys already know how that went down. And so I was 19 then. He had gone off to the military, and we were supposed to get married. He never did come back. Again, that feeling of abandonment came over me. Now I'm still dealing with feeling abandoned by the church. So now the second thing happens in my life that leaves me feeling abandoned. So finally, I graduate high school, and I'm going to church with my mom, because now we're at a different church. But I was, every time I would go to church, I would just be like, just there, I would just be there. And so the first person to come along, I'm 19 now, and said, God said that you're my wife. In my 19-year-old mind, I'm thinking that was God's way of saying, okay, I'm ready. I want you back now. So I wind up getting married to a person I really didn't know. I liked him, but um, I can't say that I was in love, if you will. What I wanted was some kind of way to get back to God. And I thought, in my 19-year-old mind, I thought if I married someone who was a preacher or who was a minister, then that was God's way of telling me he wants me back, or he accepts me back. So even against my parents saying, don't marry this person, this and the third, I married that person anyhow. In my mind, I went back and had this conversation with my mom some years later. I told her, I said, Mom, I wasn't disobeying you. I thought I was obeying God, because I thought that was God's way of saying, okay, I want you back now. Now you can come back. I know you had a baby out of wedlock. I know you've made some really bad choices or what have you, but now I want you back. And so I thought that's what that was. And she said, um, she said, I'm so glad you came to talk to me. She says, and from that day on, my mom spoke a blessing over my life and all of that good stuff. And from that day on, the Lord's hand of protection has been on me. when it comes to relationships and things of that nature. So, um, so now I get married. It started out okay, but then it quickly turned um, to not be okay. Because we're in ministry, we're so young. Well, I'm still so young. I think he's about 5 years my senior. He had been on his own his whole life. I had never been away from my parents. you know a lot of times people think, well, you had a baby. Child, that don't make you grown because you have a baby. Trust me. And um and so I thought, because it started out with me wanting to get back to God, I actually thought there were certain things I had to take. So I stayed in the marriage 20 years to someone I always felt like you needed me, but you didn't really love me or like me. And so, and that would show up in how I was treated. It would show up in how I was talked to, stuff like that. So, uh, in my mind, it was abusive, you know, and a lot of stuff was just really uncalled for. And so, again, I'm thinking, I just want to get out of this. I just want to be somewhere. I just want my life back, And I think once things start getting really, really bad, you know, uh, I felt there was no other way out. We had two kids together, and I felt that at that time there was no other way out. We're preaching here, we're preaching there, we're pastoring, and to everybody they think we're just a perfect couple, but behind closed doors, honey, let me tell you, it was hell. It was hell. And it got to the point where I decided, I there's no way out. He's never going to leave me. He's never going to let me leave him. He's never going to agree to a divorce. These are things I knew. If I try to leave, he's not going to let me take my kids. So at that point, that was my first time thinking about how can I escape him and just be free of him altogether, short of killing him. you know. And so I thought to myself, well, I know what I'll do. I went and I got a hotel room, and I got some let me tell you how much I didn't know. I bought two wine coolers, and I had some uh pain pills. So I said, I'm tired. I'm tired. No matter what I do, no matter, how good of a wife I try to be, it's like nothing is making him treat me better. And, but let him tell the story, you'll probably hear it in a totally different way. Everybody has their side of the story. And then we have to decide, well, what's the truth? Well, the Lord knows. I'll just say that the Lord knows. And so I said to myself, well, I don't see any other way out of this. You know, it was so bad. You know, I remember I had already tried to kill him because it was so bad. Uh, the first time I tried, my oldest daughter, she was 13 at the time. And I remember telling him something that had happened to me. And it took me a long time to tell him what happened to me. When I finally did tell him, he said, well, since you took so long to tell me, um, you must have enjoyed it. So what happened was, one of his friends, and I know this is a lot to take in, but just hold on. So one of his friends, I kept telling him, your friends are, saying stuff to me, when you're not around. So he was like, oh, I don't believe you, you just uppity, um, you and your whole family think y'all something because y'all got a little money, and he used to always say, that's stupid of you, your mama's stupid, your daddy's stupid, all y'all stupid, y'all think y'all something, and he would just go on and on and on. And I'm just like, well, I'm telling you the truth. I'm not comfortable with your friends coming around. Don't send them around here to do work on the house. Don't send them around here to, do yard work when you're wait till you're home. Don't send them over here when you're not home. I kept telling him that. Well, he was like, well, why would anybody try to talk to you? I'm just like, what? You know, so I also was running a business at the time. And so one of his friends needed some work done. So I was like, well, I'm getting ready to close my office. If you can be in the next 10, 15 minutes, I'll go ahead and uh, sign up on your paperwork for you, notarizing and all that good stuff. Well, he came on by, so he paid me, and I got ready to reach to get a receipt for him. And when I handed him the receipt, so now I'm walking around, heading out. I said, well, okay, well, come on. So as we're walking out, I hand him his receipt, and next thing I know, there's a full-on assault going on. And I'm trying to reach for my phone. He pushes my phone out the way. I'm trying to grab my keys so I can have a weapon. He grabs my keys. And so there's a full-on sexual assault that happens, rape. And so I'm just like, I swear to God, I'm going to tell everybody what you did. So here's what he said to me. Well, I know your husband better than you know him. And all I have to do is tell him that you and I was already going together, and he's going to believe me over you. I thought to myself, nah, that's not true. That's not true. That would never happen. Well, quiet as kept. That's exactly what happened. That's exactly what happened. And only thing I remember is when he said, oh, so you waited this long to tell me, you must have enjoyed it. All I remember, I blacked out. I remember being in the kitchen. Next thing I remember, when I came to, my daughter was screaming, my kids were screaming, and he was standing there looking like a ghost, and I had a knife to his throat. That's the last thing I remember. I couldn't even tell you how I got from the kitchen over to where he was standing. I don't remember that. At that point, I said, you know what? I got to get out of here. I got to get away from you, because I literally felt like I was just slipping and slipping and slipping away. Keep in mind, we're still pastoring, we're still traveling, we're still preaching, and people just think we just the couple of the year. And I'm just like, Sunday morning I get up, do my face, put my first lady clothes on, and we were at church. Not knowing, a lot of times I slept on the floor the night before, crying myself to sleep, scared to sleep next to him because I didn't know. Sometimes I just didn't know what would trigger him. And so it was at that point I just didn't know how else to get out. So I said goodbye to my kids. I waited. I waited till I was at the hotel, because I told him I was just going to the store. But in my mind, I knew I was going to try to commit suicide, because I figured that was the only way out. That was the only way he was going to let me go. And I was tired of being screamed and yelled at. And one of his favorites line was, "I'll knock the piss out you." I was just tired. And then we got to get up Sunday morning and go to church, and I got to sit there, amen, preach, as if you didn't just, call me stupid and all this kind of stuff like the night before. And sometimes, right before we got to church, and just like, I remember one time it got so bad, he started at church in the office, and I was just like, please, please, please don't do this here. And so I thought that the only way out was to just end it, you know. And I thought about my kids, and I was just like, you know what? They'll be better off without me. And so I took the pills, and I drank both of the wine coolers, and I went to sleep. The crazy thing was, the next morning I woke up, And I was looking around the hotel room and I was thinking, I'm still here. Why am I still here? Like, from what I had seen, that was the way to do it. You're supposed to take a lot of pills. You're supposed to like drink something with alcohol in it. But it didn't work. I just woke up with this terrible, terrible headache. That was the first time. So I waited for a little while until I could coherently drive myself. So I went back home and nothing had changed, Um, in fact, I told him what I did, and he was like, that was dumb of you. That was stupid. I was just like, you know. And then my last baby, I didn't know I was pregnant. And one night I was just in a lot of pain, a lot of pain, a lot of pain. And so I get up to go to the bathroom, and I'm just in so much pain, so much pain, so much pain. And what happened was I wind up pre-delivering, if you will, a fetus at home. So, but I didn't know that's what it was. I was just in a lot of pain. And this is probably the first time I've talked about this openly, because I think it's time. I just think it's time to help a lot of people heal. And sometimes our silence gives consent. And so I called the doctor, and the doctor told me what it was, and not to be gross or anything. So I had to take it out of the toilet, put it in a paper bag, and take it to the hospital. Well, we found out it was a female fetus. So I would cry and cry and cry for days and weeks. And he would just look at me and say, "What's wrong with you now?" Never comforted me, never talked about it, never asked questions about it, never, and then I hemorrhaged so bad, I had to be rushed to the emergency room. I stayed in the hospital for days and days and days. Um, what was crazy, my OBGYN at that time was incredible. When he found out that I was in the emergency room, he came out there, physically picked me up and took me in the back. And he was like, "Why do y'all have her out here waiting?" And so that was a blow. When I felt like, how do you go through something so dramatic and traumatic and not be allowed to mourn or grieve, or have anyone to actually give you any kind of emotional support. So shortly after that, I started saying, well, maybe I need to go see a therapist, because I just kept feeling like I was getting into this darker, deeper place. And first he was like, no, I'm not paying for that, because I don't want people to say my wife is crazy, this, that, and the third. And, that's just a spirit. You got a spirit on you. And I said, I don't have a spirit on me. I wanted to say, you don't think it's a spirit that caused you to get in my face and scream and yell and call me names and, threaten to do stuff to me? That's not a spirit. But at that time, I didn't have the strength to say all of that. I would think it, but I didn't have the strength to say all of that back then. And so finally, I was able to go to counseling. And then even going to counseling, because I did not change anything that caused me to get into that place I was at, I wind up trying it again. I wind up actually trying it again. And the next time I tried it, I was just like, I don't even care no more. I don't even care. I just didn't even care anymore. I didn't care if the church found out. I just didn't care anymore, because keep in mind, I'm still putting on this face, every Sunday. I'm still putting on this face everywhere we go where he has to preach, or or where I have to preach. If he had to preach, I had to be there. But if I had to preach, he would take on extra hours at work or what have you, and might show up late or whatever, something stuff like that. So I'm just like, okay. So again, I tried it, and nothing happened. So after 20 years, I was like, okay, enough is enough. So I remember I kept saying, you know, I feel like I'm depressed in this marriage. Oh, you ain't depressed. You just this. And, your parents spoiled you. And, he would always, go back to how I was raised and, talk about my family and my parents and this, that, and the other. I'm just like, that's so unfair, um, to criticize the way people were raised because they're raised differently. I just thought that was kind of unfair. And so, um, and one of the meanest things he ever, I was like, why did you marry me? What do you see when you look at me? He was like, I just see dollar signs. That's why I married you. That was so cold, that was so cold. But so I remember he started on not to piss at you, this, that, and the third. So the year prior to, I said, listen, I can't do this anymore. I said, you got me so scared of you. I'm sleeping with a knife under my pillow. I don't know what you're gonna do. I never know what's gonna, trigger you. I don't know what's gonna set you off, what makes you happy anymore, what makes you sad, what makes you mad. I don't know what to do. And I try to get you to go to counseling with me. You don't want to go to counseling. You don't want to talk to me. I don't know what else to do. I already know you was cheating, and I'm still here, so cheating was not the ultimate deal breaker. You starting to put your hands on me. That was the deal breaker. Was the deal breaker. And I know somebody might say, well, that make you sound stupid. You saying cheating wasn't a deal breaker. No, it doesn't make me sound stupid. Cheating was not the deal breaker. It wasn't until, when you start wanting to put your hands on me and treat me as if I'm one of the children that you have to raise. You know what I'm saying? And so that's when I start saying, nah, I better get out of this because I'm already sleeping with a knife under my pillow. Now, keep in mind, again, we're still pastors. We're still preachers. We're still, just going about as if everything is okay. And when people would see us, bishops will say, hey, y'all, we would see bishops out in the store, at restaurants or what have you. They'll be like, he taking good care of you. He'll give me that little look and I'll be like, yes, sir. Everything good, because he'll give me that little look like, you already know what the deal is. You say something wrong, you gonna get it. When I tried to tell him about his friend that raped me, he was like, that ain't true. I'm just so sick of you. You so uppity. Your mom and daddy got you like that. He would just go off on me. That's why I don't even talk to you. I talk to my friends more than I talk to you. Look how you is. And I'm like, I'm telling you the truth. I'm telling you about your friends. I kept trying to tell him about his friends, but he refused to listen to me. And so when it got to the point to where he actually started wanting to, push and shove and, because at first he used to say, well, at least I ain't never bust you in your head. If I was busting you in your head, then you could say I was abusive. I'm just like, you don't think if you this close in my face and you screaming and yelling at me and till you literally got me afraid of you and you calling me stupid and you calling me, you tired of taking care of my black behind and you don't think that's abusive? I work just as hard as you work, and I make more money, So I'm just like, it got to the point. So I said, okay, I got to get out of this. So it was a year had gone. The first time I tried to file for divorce, it was my oldest was 19 at that time. Right after I filed, I didn't tell him I was filing because I already knew it was going to be a showdown. And I'm still processing. I'm still secretly, now I'm taking medication for depression secretly. He doesn't know about this because keep in mind, he didn't want me to go to the doctor because he didn't want the church to find out. He didn't want we was pastors. He didn't want our church to find out. He didn't want the people that was our overseers to find out that we were having any problems, let alone me going to therapy or, having to deal with depression or had already had, 2 attempts with suicide because I really just wanted to get away from him, and had tried to kill him twice, so. And so we was just going on. So I go secretly file and I tell my attorney, you can't send any paperwork to the house. Anytime you need to get something to me, you have to call me so I can come in. If you send something to the house and he finds it, that's going to really be bad for me. So my attorney, she knew not to send any paperwork to the house. So I'm secretly dealing with depression. I'm secretly struggling with suicide. At that time, 2 suicide attempts. I'm secretly struggling with actually having to deliver a fetus at home, take the fetus out of the stool, put it in a brown paper bag, take it to the hospital. I'm hemorrhaging almost to death, still not able to talk to him about it. If I started crying, what's wrong with you now? It was always something. Soon as I filed, my oldest daughter gets diagnosed with cancer. And I'm thinking, oh my God, so of course that puts the divorce on hold now. So we were living in Alabama at the time because he was chasing after this big church that I kept saying, I don't trust these people. They're not going to come through with what they're saying. Yes, they are. You just don't want me to have this. You don't want me. I said, I don't want to go to Alabama. I don't want to do this. I don't believe it's what they're saying. I said, I've been praying about it and my spirit is just not right. It's not settling with me about this. I want, they had offered him a church, said they had a house, said there were going to be contracts, there was going to be this, that, and the third, and he was just so smitten by it. And I kept saying, if we don't have contracts in hand, we should not be moving, 2, 3 states over. Well, he wouldn't listen, wind up moving there, that we didn't have no house, we didn't have nothing. So we had to wind up finding housing, all of that stuff. Everybody had to get jobs. It was a mess. Just like I told him it was going to be, nothing happened the way these people said it was going to happen. And so my daughter gets diagnosed with cancer. So now I got to put the divorce on hold. So I don't know what set him off. So he started, I knocked the piss at you, whatever. And so I say, you know what? The next time you tell me that, I'm going to leave you. You ain't going nowhere. Nobody's going to want you. So I'm like, okay. So now I got all of this in my mind. Now on top of all of that, we're still in ministry now. We're still pastors. With all of that in my mind, now I got to process my daughter being diagnosed with cancer. Fast forward, a full year goes by. We're still actually married. So we had this 3-level house. So I stayed in the bottom of the house and I asked him to move out the room. So he moved into one of the rooms on the top level of the house because I was really, really afraid of him. And I was like, I don't want to hurt you. I don't want you to hurt me. And I don't want to hurt you out of fear because I start having these dreams that I would just stab him in his sleep because I was so afraid of him. So I told him, I said, I can't do this anymore. I'm going to hurt you in your sleep because that's the only way I'm going to be able to get the advantage over you when you sleep because you're bigger than me. You're stronger than me. You're a man. So he moved into one of the rooms upstairs. And that's how we lived for a year. And for some reason, he had this crazy dream that I was seeing somebody. So he came downstairs and confronted me about a dream he had. And I was like, that's crazy. You're the one doing all of that. So I'll knock the piss at you. I said, hold on a minute. I said, remember a year ago, this is a true story, guys. True story. I said, remember a year ago, I told you, next time you tell me if you're going to knock the piss at me, I was going to leave you. So I said, I've been thinking about this. And this is how I was talking to him. I said, I've been thinking about this. So at that point, he said, wait a minute, you ain't crying. So he got up. Oh, you ain't scared of me no more. I said, you know what? I'm tired of being scared. I'm tired. I said, right now, my daughter comes first. All of my energy, all of my attention has to go to my daughter, who now has been in has been diagnosed with cancer for a year now. So now she's 20, and I said, I just don't have the energy to do this with you anymore. So I said to him, this is how I'm talking. I said, I've been thinking about it, how hard you got to hit me to knock the piss at me. I said, you got to hit me mighty hard in order for you to knock the piss at me. So I said, before you do, this is how I'm talking to him. I said, before you knock the piss out me, I said, can you do me one favor? What is it? He is screaming, what is it? I go over to my dresser and I pull out these papers that I had hidden. I said, can you sign these papers before you knock the piss at me? So he takes the papers and he reads them. You're divorcing me? He falls out on the floor, starts screaming and crying, accusing me of tearing up his family. And he was just over so dramatic. And I'm standing there just looking at him like, no expression. I had absolutely no expressions on my face, and I wanted out. So we finally get divorced. He moves out, I keep the house and everything. Um, so we finally get divorced. It was really hard because I had been married 20 years and got married at 19. First time I had ever been away from my parents was when I married him, you know. Um, and keep in mind that whole time we're still doing ministry, you know. So now I'm in ministry, now I'm divorced. I have 3 kids, you know. Um, I got, I'm dealing with depression. I tried to commit suicide. I've lost a child that I still mourn, but I couldn't, he would never talk to me about it. I'm seeing a therapist. I was being treated for depression. I was taking medication, couldn't tell anybody, and, but I was still in church, you know. I took a few moments off and then I opened my own church. So I'm still pastoring, still going along, all of that. So it wasn't until a few years later, I think I stayed single for about 4 or 5 years. And then I moved home to help take care of my mom. That was in 2009, I think. So in 2009, my mom was like, well, you need to get married. You're a single woman now. You're out there preaching. You're traveling. You need a husband that's going to cover you. I was like, no, I'm done that. I don't want to do that again right now. I just want to take time and find myself because I really don't believe I was healed internally. You can't, 20 years, you can't heal 20 years overnight. You can't heal from that overnight. You can't heal from that deep feeling of rejection overnight. And this is where I think a lot of pastors are not doing well. We're not taking, when we go through dramatic situations and traumatic situations, when we go through these astronomical losses, divorce, job losses, illnesses, things like that, we don't take time to heal internally. So what we start doing is we start allowing the ministry to become our medication. And so what happens is, as long as we're up before the people, we're healed. But but as soon as we have to go back, like this is where I started off, as soon as we have to go back to the hotel room or come back to the house where there's no one there calling our names, there's no one there asking for autographs, that's when we have to dealing with all the stuff that we allowed the ministry to medicate. We have to start thinking about, why did I marry this person? When people will say, well, what God put together, y'all shouldn't well, God, maybe God didn't put us together, And so, because surely if it had been the Lord's doing, then it would have been done indeed. And so you have to think about that. And then on top of that, I had so many I thought were friends and colleagues in the ministry saying crazy stuff to me like, girl, you a prophet. You didn't see that coming. You a prophet. You should have seen that coming, stuff like that. So Instagram, if you guys get cut off, I'm gonna bring you right back. So I see quite a few of you are on Instagram tonight. Thank you for tuning in. If it shuts you off, come right back. Okay, just stay tuned. I'm gonna bring you right back in. I think it's gonna cut you off in just a minute. I'll bring you right back. Okay, thank you. And so for some reason, there they go. For some reason, let me get them right back. All right, we're back. You guys come on back in on Instagram. We're back. I do apologize. But anyhow, so I stay single for a little while. And so many times we medicate ourselves with ministry, and we're not dealing with the real issues. We're not dealing with the root of the issues. We're not dealing with the real problems behind the smiles, the problems behind, the suits, and the problems behind the makeup, the problems behind, the pulpit antics, the problem behind all of that. Thank you for coming on back in. Thank you. And so we're not dealing with that. We're allowing ministry to be our medication. And when ministry when our time of ministry is up, then we go right back to feeling like we're back in that dark place. We're back in that place of depression and feeling like, what am I going to do next? It's almost like we're waiting for our next high. We're waiting for our next hit. We're waiting for our next ministry assignment so we can get our next dose of medication. Because for a lot of us, outside of either ministry or business, we don't know how to live outside of those worlds, and I was both. I had graduated with a legal degree. So I graduated on Sunday, went to work Monday morning for my dad's attorney. When I was younger, I was married. I had my kids, because remember now, I'm married at 19. So, and I didn't go back to college. I didn't go to college until years later, till I think I was in my late 20s or maybe early 30s. Then I went back to school, and I got a legal assisting degree. And so with that degree, like I said, I graduated on Sunday, went right to work on Monday morning for my dad's attorney. And so, so for me, and then I also was did my side job, which was a freelance paralegal, and that business, it just took off. And so with all of that, and still a pastor's wife, still, he would preach. We would alternate Sundays preaching. I'm building the ministry. Most of the time, all he would have to do is show up to preach, because I've done everything. I've said everything. I've cleaned the church. I did everything. To me, I was a really good assistant pastor. I always say that, and I know I was. And so with all of that, I did not know how to function outside of being a wife, because I was a wife so long, for 20 years, from 19 to however old I was when we got divorced. Being a mother, I started being a mother at 16, so, being a pastor, I was ordained as a pastor in 1997, so working in ministry, I started working in ministry at age 14. So outside of those spheres, and outside of those scopes, and outside of those realms of functionality, I did not know how to function. And so a lot of times, if I wasn't doing ministry, I would get in this low place. If I wasn't signing a contract or something, I would get in this low place. If I wasn't running around with the children, I would get in this low place. And I kept finding myself going to this low place, into this dark place. And at the time, I did not know specifically, no one had actually given it a name. At that time, they were saying, well, it looks like you might be dealing with depression, but no one ever gave me a definite diagnosis. They said, well, we're just going to give you this medication. You just take this, what have you. And so, so I stayed single for about 4 or 5 years. And in those 4 or 5 years, a lot happened. When we divorced, I lost everything. I lost everything. except for our clothes, you know, um, pictures, everything was gone. It was a really hard divorce, but it also saved my life, you know. So I wind up, here's a part of my story I have never told, and I think the enemy uses this over me. So tonight, first time ever talking about this publicly, I am going to break a hold off of me that the enemy has had over me for years and years and years, because I would never tell anybody. So I moved back home in 2009. Oh, yes, he did too. Oh, yes, he did too, Jonathan. God had a plan. And I wish I had known that then, but I just didn't. I just didn't, because again, I kept slipping into this dark place. I just kept slipping into this dark place. And when I would see our, bishops and overseers and stuff, no one would ask me how was I doing. No one asked me that. No one would ask me. What's the Lord saying, today, prophet? Those are the kind of questions I would get. And I'm like, I don't know what he's saying. We would laugh it off, chuckle it off or what have you. But no one ever really asked me, are you okay? Do you need anything? No one ever asked me that. I got a lot of cynical comments like, you didn't see this coming, you a prophet, God didn't show you that was going to happen, stuff like that. People were being very cynical in my opinion. And so I moved back home 2009. My mom was getting sick, and so I moved back home 2009. So I got divorced in 2006, 2005, 2006, somewhere up in there. Then I moved back home in 2009, and I was home for a little while, and a classmate of mine who I had not seen in, oh my, maybe 30 years, contacted me through Facebook. And I really didn't remember him at the time, but he said he remembered me, and he talked about family members that he knew and all that kind of stuff. So we wound up talking on the phone and everything. Then we went out or what have you. And it was very strange. My mom kept saying, oh, you need to get married. I'm like, no, I don't want to get married right now. I'm still healing. She was like, well, it's been 4 or 5 years. I said, but I still need time. There's, you're talking about 20 years, just, and the stuff I went through, I said, because I had never told my family the level of abuse that I was going through, so my mom didn't know. Like when I would call my mom with something would happen, first thing my mom would say, and this is no slight against my mom, this is just the truth. She would say, well, what did you do? And I'm like, I didn't do anything. He flip out. You never know what would make him angry. Just flip out. You can ask him the wrong question the wrong way and boom, screaming at you. And you'd be like, okay, I'm sorry what I said. Stuff like he would say, well, make us a budget. Okay, I go make a budget, give it to him. He would do good for 2 weeks. And then I would say, well, we're getting off budget. That would, he would flip out. Oh, you're trying to control me? You're trying to tell me what, that would make him flip out, stuff like that. I'm just like, I don't know what to do. So when I would try to tell my mom, her response would be, well, what did you do? So I stopped telling anybody anything. I just felt like I was alone. And again, I kept slipping back into this dark place. So 2009, I wind up marrying somebody again. And this person asked me, am I even your type? I said, no, you're not my type. I said, but my mom is just pressuring me, and my mom think I'm just out here doing this. She think I'm out here doing this. So he was like, well, will it help if I talk to your mom for you? And I said, yeah, you can try to talk to her. And so he came to my mom's house and he was like, Miss Bradley, um, Benita told me what was going on. I want to let you know that's not what's happening when she's at my house. And, your daughter's a really good person. She's saved for real. And, this, that, and the third. My mom was like, oh, you're lying. You're covering for her. This, that, and the third. I just want her to get out of my house. And I'm just like, you want me to get out? I've come all the way, 'cause when I left Alabama, I came to Atlanta and I was living in Atlanta. I'm like, I left Atlanta to come here to help take care of you. Now you're talking about get out, because of what you think somebody is doing. Keep in mind, I'm still a pastor. I'm still, just trying to hold on to God. But somewhere in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, I don't want to have nothing to do with this no more. I don't have anything to do with this anymore. So right after, let me back up a minute. Right after we got divorced in 2005, 2006. So right after that, um, I was having these horrible migraines. I mean, blinding migraines that I would lose sight on one side. Um, they were horrible, horrible. I would lose consciousness. I would black out from the pain and the pressure in my head. Um, so I finally go to the doctor. They send me to a neurologist. So they do all these tests on me, test. So they said, well, we'll call you with the results. So I'm like, okay. So my daughter at this time now, she has a daughter. So my oldest daughter, myself, we're at the movies at 6 o'clock on a Sunday evening. We're at the movies. So I get a call on my phone as we walking through the concession stand. We're heading into our movie. So it's my neurologist. And I'm just like, hello. It was like, this is Dr. Alipati. He's Indian. This is Dr. Alipati. And I was like, you do know it's Sunday. Why are you calling me on a Sunday? So he says, I came into my office to do some work and there's an urgent note for me to call you with your test results here. And I said, okay. He says, are you sitting down? And I said, no, we're at the movies. Can you call me back tomorrow? He says, no, this can't wait. I need to talk to you right now. He said, can you please get somewhere and sit down? So I was like, okay. So I sat down and so he goes, well, your test results came back in and we see that somehow or another, there you have a crack in your skull and you have what we call cancer has metastasized. And I said, metastasized, what does that mean? So he said, that means it has spread to your brain. I said, spread from where? No one has ever told me I had cancer in my body. So he says, we don't know yet. All we know is that the results are conclusive and this is what we're seeing. So he says, I need you to go home, get your affairs in order. I said, what you mean get my affairs in order? Like, you talking to me like you think I'm dying. So he got quiet on the phone. And I said, hello? He says, yes. I said, so you're trying to say I'm dying? He says, yes. But we don't know when. We don't know how long you have. That's how come I need to get to you today, tell you to go home, talk to your family, and then I'll see you in my office this week. I'm like, I'm not, I'm dying. So they said they saw something in my brain. This was in 2007. So I go home, I'm screaming, I'm crying. I call my brother. I make a copy of my medical file, send him all my medical records, tell him to take care of my kids. I'm screaming, I'm hollering. At that point, I was pretty much done with church. I was done. I was sick of church. I didn't want to hear nothing about church. I didn't want to hear nothing about church people. I felt like I had spent my life from 14 until I got divorced. I felt like I spent my entire life working for God, and then God just let all this happen to me. So, of course, all of that threw me right back into that dark place again. I'm just like, I'm going to die now, you know, so whatever, you know. So I feel like I just started living reckless because I didn't care no more. You know, I don't want to have nothing to do with the church. I don't want to have nothing to do with no church people. You know, don't call me no pastor. Don't call me prophet. Just call me Benita or call me Miss Bradley. You know, I just didn't want to have nothing to do with nothing. And so my kids would be like, we're going to church today. No, we ain't going to church. You know, I don't want to have nothing to do with church. Well, long story short, they wind up testing me like, oh my God. I spent about 2 days in the hospital just testing. When I say they test literally from the tip of my fingernails to the tip of my toenails, they tested my entire body, trying to find out where, in fact, the cancer had come from to spread to my brain. They couldn't find it. So they got ready to start me on chemo. So the day I go to see Dr. Sarma, which is the oncologist, I go to the chemo doctor, and the nurse comes running out. So now we've been going through this about 4 or 5 months, maybe. So now I'm going straight into treatment. So now she comes running out. I'm thinking, oh my God, they found it. It's true. I'm going to die. You know, she comes running out to greet me, and my heart just stopped. My heart just stopped. So I just stood there, start crying. And she says, no, don't cry, don't cry. I said, just how long do I have? Just tell me how long I have. My middle daughter was with me that day. I said, just tell me how long I have, you know. And I said, I already sent all my medical information home to my brother. I said, so just tell me how long I have. I had called home to Orlando, told everybody basically goodbye. But you know what? I think what made me sad is that none of my family came to see about me. When I did finally tell them, none of my family came to see about me. That made me really sad. And so here I was facing what I thought was a death sentence. And I felt like I was facing it alone, you know. And that time my ex, he did start coming back around. He was a little bit nicer, but I couldn't be around him too long, you know. And so um and then my daughter's father, he was coming from Texas to help be with her going through chemo. And then my mom finally came when my daughter started going through chemo. But at first, no one was there, you know, while I thought I was dying, but me and my kids. And so she came out and she greeted me. She took me in the back, and they told me, they said, we have tested you. And I was just crying. He said, I know this has been a long couple of months, these last few months. He said, I know you're emotionally drained. And he says, but we cannot find where cancer is coming from. In fact, we cannot find it anywhere in your body. So I said, so the tests were wrong? I wasn't dying? He said, no. He says, no, I read the reports. He said, I saw all of your scans. I read the reports. He said the reports were accurate. And I say, well, how can this be now? How? He says, we don't know. But whatever was there, it was there. And he says, however, it's no longer there. He says, we have checked you and checked you and checked you. And he says, whatever was there is no longer there. This was in 2007 when they told me I only had so long to live, but they wouldn't tell me how long I had. And so I finally get through that. And then I go home. I go back home. And then I wind up getting, now it's 2009. I go back home and I wind up getting married to somebody I didn't know. You know, I really didn't know. You know, just because you go to school with somebody, that don't mean you know people. And we hadn't seen each other in 30 years or so. And he asked the question, he says, am I even your type? I said, no, you're not. I don't want to do this, you know. But between what was going on with my mom and between what he was saying, I was like, you know, why not? I don't know what else to do, you know. And I thought that was going to be something that was doable, you know. But it wasn't. That was out of the frying pan into the fire, if you will, you know. On the surface, it looked really great. It looked, you know, okay. It looked one way on the surface. But again, behind closed doors, you know, it was very abusive, you know. I mean, I never had anybody use the F word so much, you know. I just didn't see that coming, you know, because on face value, this person looks like a sweet person, makes everybody laugh, you know, and everybody had their opinion about what happened, what could have happened, but I chose not to talk. And I'm still not going to say too much, you know. Even though it's been years and years and years, it's just my choice. I'm just not going to say too much by either case. Um, and I have my reasons. But anyhow, it ended in 18 months. 18 months, I was, you know, it was too much. It was too much. And it kept taking me back. Every time something would happen, I would say, you know, this is taking me back to somewhere that I had gotten myself out of, you know. I didn't want to be in that place anymore. You know, I didn't want to have to deal with those issues anymore. So I was just like, I can't do it. So we wind up splitting up. That was a really hard breakup because it was the way things were done. It was just so much underhanded stuff going on. That was crazy. That was crazy. And so I'm thinking, I wasn't really thinking, dang, I've been married twice and divorced twice. You know what I was really thinking about? What are the church people going to say about this? And when it really came to me, I found myself, my son had an apartment in Florida at the time. So I wind up going with him. And the way everything was done, I was tricked into being in this situation. You know, I was told, well, we're going to buy a house, you know, this, that, and the third. And, you know, this is what we have to do. We're going to do it this way so we can save up money to buy a house, this, and the third. But that's not what happened, you know. And after we had gone to counseling, I found out what was the real problem, you know, when we were in counseling. But it had never been told to me. So once I found out what the issue was, I was like, well, okay, you know, it ain't nothing I can do to change that, you know. Some things you just can't change. I cannot change, and I won't change, you know, who I am as a person to make somebody else feel comfortable about who they are not. Okay. I had already done that for 20 years. And so we wind up getting a divorce. And again, the people that I thought would actually be there spiritually were the ones saying the cruelest things, you know, just fly at the mouth, you know. So it got to the point where this person took everything that I had owned and made it impossible for me to have access to any of my possessions. It was an ugly, ugly court battle. It was just ugly. It was ugly. And it was a lot going on behind closed doors. Again, a lot going on. So I finally got to the place where I was like, well, what is it about me that keeps finding myself in this situation? I mean, it was only twice, but twice was enough. So through therapy, I was working through all of that, and then when the divorce hit me, I couldn't take it. I just couldn't take it. And I remember my head was hurting so bad. I remember my heart was hurting so bad. I remember my soul was hurting extremely bad. My soul felt like it was just screaming at me. And so I remember I was at my son's apartment and he had left the house. And I remember I said, I just need to take something to make my head stop hurting. Well, I remember taking some pain medicine, but it wouldn't stop. So I said, well, maybe I'm gonna wait an hour and I'm gonna take two more. So I waited an hour and I took some more. But then my chest was start. My chest was like I couldn't breathe. My chest was hurting so bad. Excuse me. So then I said, well, maybe I need to take something else, to make my chest stop hurting. So I took a different kind of medicine, but my chest kept hurting. So now I got all this different medicine in me, and I'm not thinking. I'm just really not thinking. Honestly, I'm just like, I just need my body to stop hurting. I need my head to stop screaming. My heart was screaming. My soul was screaming. I felt like my being was screaming at me like, how did you let this happen? Why did you allow yourself to get back into this situation? This boy done took everything you got. He put it in a storage and took my name off of it so I couldn't get to it, put him and his mom's name on it. I didn't have access to none of my stuff. I only had, my clothes. And I'm just like, why would anybody do this to me? You came after me. Why would anybody do this to me and then make it look like to everybody else, I'm the villain, I'm the bad person. If I start telling what you was doing, how you had trackers on my car, trackers on my phone, trackers, how you was just doing stuff, how you would lock me in the room when I didn't want to argue with you. If I start talking, it's going to make me look like, oh, she's just being bitter. She's being vindictive. That's how come I never have talked about it openly. I have never shared it with anybody, even privately. I've just not talked about it because it was already put out there that, oh, she's crazy. Oh, she's this. And oh, she was just after that. And I'm just like, after what? I came in the relationship with 2 bank accounts. You didn't have no bank account. All you had was a job that you had been on. I was the one came in with 2 bank accounts. I was the one came in with the good credit score, and I'm just like, people will think whatever they think because that's the way they want to think, and you can't do anything about it. So I found myself, everything in me was just screaming, screaming, screaming. And I would try to think, who can I call? Who can I call to talk to? I couldn't talk to anybody, not even my family, because listen, we're just not that close like that. That's just honest. A lot of times people don't like to pretend, and I'm so tired of pretending. We're not that close where I would have those kind of conversations. We're not, that hurts my heart because we're all saved. We all say we love God, and we have a lot of preachers in our family, but we're just not that close like that. So again, I found myself in this dark place. And so before I knew anything, I remember vaguely my son asking me, Mama, did you take anything? And I said no. Um, and the next thing I remember him shaking me. And the next thing I remember, it was like I was asleep and I could hear everybody talking around me. And I was trying to respond, but I couldn't respond to anybody. So I remember hearing somebody say, she's non-responsive. I remember hearing that. And so I'm guessing he must have dialed 911. because he found me on the floor of his apartment when he got back home because I had taken so much pain medicine, trying to stop the pain. So when I finally woke up, I was in the hospital, and I don't know how long I had been out. I don't know. Um, so when I came to, I was like, "What am I doing in the hospital?" They was like, "You don't know what happened?" I was like, "No, I don't remember what happened." Um, this was in 2011, because we only stayed together 18 months after we got married. So I said, I don't remember what happened. So they said, well, do you remember trying to hurt yourself? I was like, no, I wouldn't try to hurt myself. And they was like, are you sure? So they had me in this area in the hospital, and then they had this orange jumpsuit on the bed. And I was like, what is that? It was like, you have to put that on. And I was like, why do I have to put that on? They was like, well, you're in the psychiatric ward, and everyone in the psychiatric ward have to put that on. So we have to keep an extra eye on you so you don't hurt yourself. I said, I'm not going to put that on. I don't need to be in the psychiatric ward. Why do you guys have me here? I'm totally not aware of how much medicine I took. I'm totally unaware that when they found me, I was completely non-responsive. I have no memory of that. I have no knowledge of that. So I'm thinking somebody, somebody's setting me up. Why y'all got me in here like this? This is what I'm thinking. And so finally, the psychiatrist comes in. They start talking to me. They was like, what happened? What did you see? And I start crying. And so finally, they kept asking me these questions. So they said, well, you have to go to the behavioral health hospital. Either you can go voluntarily, your family can take you, or we will make you mandatorily go for observation for a period of 48 to 72 hours. And I was like, well, by that time, I think my mom and my sister and my aunt had came to the hospital. And I said, well, can my mom take me? They was like, yeah, as long as you have to go straight there. We've already called, and you have to go straight there from here. If not, we will find you, and you will be mandatory. It'll be mandatory. You'll be held there. I was like, wow, really? So we get over there. The people are there waiting on me. I go in. The psychiatrist comes in. So I'm still in and out of consciousness. So they do my evaluation. So she asked me, she says, now the hospital said you were mumbling something about you can't believe he did that. She said, what were you talking about? And I said, I don't remember. And she said, I think you do remember. She said, something drove you to the point that you thought ending your life would be better than talking about what you saw. And I said, I don't remember. Now, keep in mind, I'm thinking, if I say anything, I'm so scared of this person now because emotionally, they have just shredded my life emotionally. Like you did in 18 months, what I recovered from, over a 20-year period. Like you just shredded my whole life. So I'm just like, no, I can't say, I can't say. And so she says, you're protecting somebody. And I would just cry. I would just cry. Now, my mom, my sister, they were in the lobby with me. Everybody else had to go home because they couldn't have all those people there. So, so then as I'm sitting there, my daughter, my oldest daughter, and one of my best friends, they come all the way from Georgia to Orlando. I had no idea they were coming. They walk in. I'm just like, what are y'all doing here? And so I go in the back. So the lady's talking to me about my support system. And so I said, she says, oh, where's your support system? I said, well, my family's out there. She says, no, ma'am. She said, that's not your support system. She said, if that was your support system, you would not be here. She said, you need a support system. She said, let me ask you something. Are you a pastor by any chance? And I said, yes. She said, you guys have one of the hardest jobs and one of the highest rates of depression and suicide attempts. She said, and most of the time, it goes beyond just the attempts. And so I said, yeah. She says, but I need you to talk. She said, because they said you kept mumbling something as you was coming to. And I said, I don't know what I was saying. She kept telling me what they recorded me saying in the hospital. And I kept acting like I didn't know what she was talking about. She says, ma'am, we're going to keep you then. If you don't talk to us, we're going to keep you. She said, I have an order here to keep you for 48 to 72 hours if you don't talk to us. So I was thinking, I don't want to stay in the mental hospital. I want to stay here in a behavioral health hospital. I don't want to be here. She was like, well, you're going to have to talk. You're going to have to tell us what you saw, what you're hiding, who you're protecting. You got to tell us what happened. And she says, if we have to call the police, that's what we have to do. She says, and it won't have your name on it. It won't come back on you in any kind of way. So I said, are you sure? And then I just start crying. She says, clearly, whatever you saw and whoever you're protecting, you're afraid of them. So finally, she kept telling me she was going to keep me. She was going to keep me. So I don't know what happened. And I just broke down. So I start telling her what I saw and what the issue was and why the marriage ended and what I saw and, what happened. So she says, well, we have to report this. And I said, she says, but your name won't be on it, or anything. The report will come from us, So she said, asked me, how did I feel? And I was just crying so bad. She says, did you try to hurt yourself? And I said, I don't know what I was trying to do, to be honest with you. I don't know. Maybe I was trying to hurt myself. Maybe I was just trying to stop from hurting so much. I said, I don't know what I was thinking when I took all those pills. I don't know. I said, I really don't know. She says, well, I think you were trying to hurt yourself. She says, but because of what you saw, she says, that would have sent anybody over the edge. She says, here's what I'm going to do. She said, I want you to sit for a minute. She says, but when you leave here, I want you to really consider leaving town. Go away, get a fresh start. She says, because you don't have a real support system here. She said, I'm just going to tell you that. So I said, okay. She said to me, well, what I'm going to do, I'm not going to write this up. She says, I'm just going to make a note for the hospital that you did come, that I did see you, and that I did not feel that it was necessary to keep you. She says, because I don't think you are mentally ill enough to be here. She says, what I think, what you saw and what you have experienced drove you over the edge. To this day, this is my absolute first time speaking about this publicly. And somebody might be saying, well, what did you see? That part I won't say. I won't say that part publicly. And so she let me go home that same night. So if anybody's trying to say, well, I'm going to see if I can find some dirt on her, I know what hospital, there's no record of me being there, So because she only wrote enough to say that I was there, So there's no record for you to go dig up. So sometimes things like that, the enemy holds over your head, or people that know you, or people that know about that kind of stuff about you, can hold it over your head to such a degree that it keeps you in bondage, and it keeps you to a place where it keeps you in this low place. To in your mind, you always consider, well, I hope nobody ever finds out how bad things got for me, or how low I went into depression, or that I actually tried to commit suicide. I hope no one actually finds that out about me, because after all, I'm a pastor. After all, I'm a prophet. After all, people like to have my signature, my autograph. After all, I sit with the who's who. So we get into all of that in our minds, when in fact our reality is behind the closed doors. There's such this darkness that we deal with, that we don't like to talk about, because it makes us look a certain way to the public. But can I share this with you? I would rather, this is the place I'm at now, I would rather tell you the truth about where I am, where I've been, and how I got there, than you to assume certain things about me, or about a situation, or what have you. And so a lot of times we enjoy letting people think one thing, when the truth of the matter is, this is what it is. And because a lot of times people are so simple minded, even when we tell them our truth, they go off and say, oh, that ain't true. It's like, when I first started to do this show, a lot of people was like, oh, you shouldn't put yourself out like that. Or somebody said, oh, you're just trying to get famous. I'm just thinking, you guys have got to be the craziest group of people I have ever talked to, because who wants to become, famous, or try to gain any kind of notoriety by putting themselves out there, by putting out the fact that, hey, if you're dealing with depression or anxiety, or if you ever thought about suicide, hey, you're not alone. Some of the best of us have traveled that road. Some of the best of us have been in that dark place. Some of the best of us have had those attempts, and so you're not alone. You're not the only one that goes through those highs and lows, and those dark places. You're not the only one. And it's a trick of the enemy to get you to a place where you're so embarrassed about it. You don't want to talk about it. You don't want to tell anybody how bad it gets, when you're feeling lonely, and when you're feeling defeated, when you feel like you let God down, or when you feel like God has let you down. So we have to really get to a place. Thank you, Jonathan. We have to really get to a place where we start saying, here is my truth. This is what amazes me about preachers. And I can talk about us, because I'm one of us. I've been one of us a long time. What amazes me about preachers is that we'll preach of a truth. We'll preach about a God who is truth. We'll preach about a God who is love. We'll preach about a God who is forgiveness. We'll preach about a God who is grace. We'll preach about a God who is mercy, is everlasting, long suffering. We'll preach about that kind of God, but then we lie about who we really are. I'll say that again. We'll lie about who we really are. How you doing today? Oh, I'm blessed and highly favored. Well, I'm not doing so good today. I've gotten to the point where people ask me, how you doing today? I say, well, it's one of those days. It's one of those days, but I thank God, particularly, it's still really hard to deal with losing my daughter. It was just last year, and we still don't really know how she died. Like, what really killed her that fast? Anybody just sitting talking to you, and then 12 hours later they died, and nobody can tell you what she died from. In the mind of a mother, that's when I was 16. So me and her literally grew up together. So I don't pay much attention to people say, oh, it's been a year, you still grieving for that. You got to be careful who you let into your grieving space. Do y'all understand me? Even I remember when she died, I was the grief counselor at my church. In fact, I was over the entire that part of the ministry. But what happened was, and I remember someone said to me, and they probably didn't mean no harm, so I don't charge it to their heart, but they said, well, just remember everything you told everybody else and then apply that to yourself and then you'll be all right. No, no, it don't work like that. You know, because at first, in my mind, it was another situation. And I remember one of the elders, he hit it dead on the head. He was like, Pastor, right now you're in pastoral mode. You're not in mother mode. So it took a while for it to really dawn on me that all this planning I was doing, all this encouraging other people I was doing, I was actually talking about my own loss. So it took me a minute before it really hit me. It didn't really hit me until I got ready to come back to Atlanta from Florida after we took her back home to bury her between my dad and her dad's dad. So she's buried between her two granddaddies. It wasn't until I got ready to pull off to head back to Atlanta that it literally hit me. I'm talking about it hit my soul that she was gone. Like like I gotta leave a part of me in Florida now. And so that's hard to carry, you know. So then I tried to get back in church and try to pick up where I left off. And, I tried, but it didn't work. It just didn't work out the way I thought it was going to work out. And listen, nobody is to blame. Nobody did anything. Nobody, there was no parting on bad terms, none of that, because people like to make up stuff. It was just, I just felt like I needed some more time. I needed some more time. And what we have done, we tell each other, just press through it. It's a blessing in pressing. You just press through it. Just keep going and let me tell y'all something about that. I was there before and I just kept going and I just kept going and I just kept going, ignoring everything I was going through, ignoring all the warning signs. My body was tired half the time. And then in 2015, I after I got divorced, 2011, I moved back to Georgia, and I've been here ever since then. I've been back in Georgia ever since 2011, and I've been single since then. You know, and so because I wanted to do the work on me. I wanted to make sure if I do decide to get into a relationship again, that it's solid, you know, and that I'm solid and that I am aware enough to make choices that are beneficial to me, not so much pushed into something because somebody keeps saying, this is what you need to do, this is what you need to do, and then pushed into a situation where I'm forced to make a decision that I otherwise would not have made for myself. All right. So it was a difficult time. And because I literally 6 months prior to that, one of my best girlfriends had died. She died really fast. Like she got sick in March or April. By the middle of the year, she was dying, and just like, what? So that back to back was really hard for me. Then dealing with the fact that I was diagnosed with brain tumors. Dealing with that, it was just crazy. Next show I'll tell you how they found the brain tumors. That's a story. When I tell it, people like, so if you believe in angels, if you believe in the Holy Spirit, you're going to be in for a treat. If you believe in miracle signs and wonders, you're looking at one now. And so being in a dark place, dealing with depression and anxiety, and going through three attempts, that third time, it's just like I didn't want to tempt the hand of God. I said, this is my third time trying it, and I'm still here. So, you know, I said, let me not do that again. I don't want to tempt the hand of God. Pre-adventure, you know, he's not looking if I try it again, something like that would come to my mind. But through counseling, I was able to, the first thing I asked my therapist was, why are uh, why are abusive men attracted to me? That's the first thing I asked, because I had been married twice, and both times was really abusive. She says, no, here's what I want you to figure out. What is it in you that makes you think that's the treatment you deserve? When that thing broke off of me, honey, you can't even look at me crossways and think you gonna have a part of my life. You can't even act like you gonna be mean to me. I just, once that thing broke off of me, you know, um, and I was able to start telling my truth about the situation, because a lot of times you don't want anybody to know that you've been through an abusive situation, because a lot of times people think that'll open the door for other people to come along and try to, pretend to be one thing. And then, you know, one thing about all of that, it sharpens your discernment, because now you know what to look for, not only in a partner, what signs to look for in yourself. Signs that, hey, you're kind of weak in this area, you're kind of vulnerable in that area. You need to submit that area a little bit more to God, or what have you, so that that same spirit, when it comes lurking, it does not find an opening in you. So that's why I think it's imperative that we are honest about the things that we go through. We are honest about how we deal with things, particularly those of us that are in ministry. I would never, point the finger and say, see, that's why you went through that. The crazy part was that I was an advocate for domestic violence, and that's when I had to realize, in order for me to be a really good advocate, I got to start telling my truth. I got to start telling the whole truth, not just, well, when I was married before. No, I've been married twice. And so that was something the enemy has held over me for the past 8 years. For the past 8 years. Because that's how long I've been single now. I've been single now for 8 years, um, not even like a boyfriend or dating, because I really wanted to do my work. I'm back in school, got one more year, now I'll be graduating, I'll be a psychologist one more year. I got 1 year left, I have bought me a car, I really have built myself up with the help of God. I'm still in therapy because I think that's necessary, particularly when you do have a lot that you've been through. I would advise anybody, if you have a lot that you deal with, even if you're a pastor and you deal with a lot of people, I don't care if you got 5 members or 5,000 members. I think anytime you hear a lot of times what people are going through, I think you should talk to somebody else too. So, I just feel like you really need to consider getting a therapist, maybe go once a month, once every other month, whatever you can afford. Most of your insurances will pay for it. You only have to pay your copay. Check into your mental health benefits. It's gonna be under mental health benefits. Most of your companies, your policies, check into your policies. If not, a lot of psychologists and psychiatrists, they can offer you fees on a sliding scale, things of that nature. You can pay by the hour, you know, um, do what you have to do to be okay. You can't, and let me tell you this, you can't pray it away. You can't shout it away. You can't speak in tongues till it go away. There's nobody powerful enough to lay hands on you and make it all go away. I don't care how much power they tell you they have. I don't know nobody that's strong enough or powerful enough to just lay hands on you and everything in your life just fall right in place. That is so not a reality, okay? So what you have to do, you got to work through whatever you got to work through so you can get through it. And I will tell you this again, don't have any shame. You may never get to a place where you're talking openly on a platform like this. This is my assignment. That's how come I have no fears, no worries about how this is going to come out, what people might think or what people might say. I'm absolutely free. I don't care who will see it. I don't care if my family see it. I don't care if my exes see it. I don't care if my wannabes see it. Like Mary J said, you got to take me as I am, or you'll get nothing at all, honey. So I'm just not worried about any of that. I'm really not concerned. What I am concerned about, I am concerned about reaching as many people as I can that I know for a fact are struggling with mental illness. And we don't like to call it mental illness because it just sounds really bad, but if you're dealing with depression or anxiety, suicidal thoughts, or stress of, fibromyalgia, these chronic headaches, all of that falls under the category of mental illness. And we don't want to talk about it in the Black church because Jesus gonna fix it. No, Jesus not gonna fix it like that. That's not his job. He is the savior of the world, not the fixer of the world. He is the savior, and you cannot neglect your responsibility by shucking it off on someone who is your savior, not your fixer, but your savior. And so we have to be more responsible for our own well-being than what we have been. All right, so let me give you some numbers. I have some numbers for you. If you are in any kind of crisis or you find yourself in any kind of trouble and you need somebody to talk to, I'm going to give you some phone numbers. So if you have paper and pencil, write these phone numbers down. Maybe you don't need them. Maybe somebody will need them at another time, okay? All right, so I do hope and pray that something I've said, help somebody that's listening and help somebody that will hear this or watch this on the playback or what have you. I do apologize. We did lose Instagram again, but hopefully they got the meat of what we were talking about. And so don't worry, as time goes on, I'm going to get better equipment, better lighting. I'm going to get everything set up really nice. So y'all just keep praying for me, okay? And if you know of any special equipment that I can get, let me know about it, and I'll look into it. Stuff that whether it's long as it has the capacity where I can hook it up to my Wi-Fi. I mean, connect it to my Wi-Fi, and I can run some of the apps like Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Periscope. If I can run those apps from it, then that'll work really, really good, okay? Because some of my devices, they're a little older, but hey, they work for now. So, but it does go in and out sometime if it's not fully charged. So, and I thought it was fully charged, but such is life, all right? So I pray that something I said helped somebody, I pray no one was offended, and if you were, that's not my intention. Somebody might say, well, you shouldn't say that about your family. I'll say whatever I want to say if it's true. That's no slack on nobody. It's just true. It's just true, and so let me give you these numbers. So if you're having any difficulty, you feel like you need somebody to talk to, the National Prevention phone number, this is the lifeline, the National Prevention Lifeline. It's 1-800-273-8255. Again, that number is 1-800-273-8255. So then if you are a veteran and you are in crisis, you're going to call the same number, 1-800-273-8255, but you're going to press option 1. All right. If you are a veteran and you're in crisis and you need somebody to talk to, you're going to dial the same number, 1-800-273-8255, but you're going to press option 1. All right. All right. So that is a national crisis number. Those of you that are in the Georgia area, there is a direct line that you can call. It's 24/7 access. That number is This is for Georgia area only. 1-800-715-4255. I'm sorry, 4225. Again, the number for Georgia Crisis Access Line, 24/7 access, 1-800-715-4225. All right. I do not have numbers for other states. If you guys know the crisis number for other states, send them to my inbox so I can announce them on our next show. Okay. Um, again, my goal is to bring awareness to mental illness in the Black community, in the Black church, depression, anxiety, PTSD, suicide attempts, all of that. Dealing with long-term illnesses, death, divorce, job loss, all of that, having to rebuild, from nothing, to you feel like, okay, I'm in a good place in my life. I got my, all that affects everything about you. The credit affects everything. Once you look around, you'd be like, wait a minute, I've rebuilt after all of that. Surely the Lord is good, and so you have to find that place where you can be okay. You have to make sure you're okay, even if you have to see a therapist, even if you have to have medication. Listen, do what you got to do to take care of yourself. You can't listen to what people are saying. You can't listen to, even if it's coming from the pulpit sometimes, you can't always listen to that. You can jump and shout and holler and scream and run around the church, but then go back and have to deal with whatever you got to deal with. You got to go back and deal with reality. And the reality of it all is it's your responsibility to make sure you're okay. I tried so hard to get someone to just sit down and talk to me. Can we please just sit down and talk? I need somebody to talk to. Can we please sit down and talk? That never happened. So I had to do what I had to do to make sure I was okay. And so a lot of people might not have been pleased with my decision, but guess what? It pleased me to know that I'm okay. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. It's your responsibility, like it was my responsibility, to make sure that mentally, as well as physically, psychologically, spiritually, that I'm faring well in life. And my goal with this show is to bring you information and to make sure that we all can fare well in life, and to let you know that no matter how low you have gone and how many times you've gone to that dark place, there is a light. I promise you, there is a light at the end of that dark, dark tunnel. Trust me, I know I've been there many times, and I am indeed walking in the light. Do I still have my days that I struggle? Absolutely. I wouldn't even tell you that I don't, because that's not honest. That's not being honest and transparent. Yes, I still have some days that I struggle really hard with different issues. However, I am seeing brighter days. I am seeing better days. I am getting some things accomplished that I could not write for a whole year. Now I'm writing again. I'm back in school, finishing out my last year of school. So there is light at the end of a very, very dark and lonely tunnel. Okay. There is light. You can make it. You can survive. If you can survive trying to kill yourself, surely it ain't too many things that can come and sweep you off your feet. Trust me on that one. I know. So I pray that you guys have learned something. I pray that you guys have heard something that would really, really cause us now to be more cognizant about what mental illness really is, how mental illness functions, and how it looks, because a lot of time we think people that are unkept or undignified or uneducated, or people that don't have any couth or any class. We're quick to say that they have mental illness, but honey, that's not mental illness. Some of that is poor planning and poor choices. But real mental illness, we would never guess. You probably would never guess that someone that looks like me, talk like me, educated like me, was one that was dealing with mental illness or depression or anxiety, under a psychiatric care, or had tried to commit suicide 3 different times, or none of that. You would never guess that just by looking, and so we have to be careful how we try to categorize and classify what mental illness looks like and what it does not look like. Because the moment that we think someone is not suffering from mental illness, boom, then all of a sudden we hear that they killed themselves. Just like the pastor about a week or so ago, he wasn't actually an advocate. You know, he's going around helping other people, you know, to stay encouraged. You know, he was an advocate, suicide prevention advocate. You know, he was a mental health advocate. He was a depression, you know, anxiety advocate, helping other people at 30 years old. Then he kills himself, you know. So it's, you cannot say this is what it looks like or this is what it looks like, because he was pastoring. He had a wife, two beautiful children, you know. So from the outside, it just looked like everything was everything. But again, you never know what goes on behind closed doors and what goes on behind the closed doors and the corridors of an individual's mind. Okay. Again, we're so quick to say, oh, that's just the spirit. Oh, we just need to pray for them more. You know, that right there, it keeps a lot of people from coming forward and telling their story. Because on top of dealing with depression, on top of dealing with any form of mental illness, I certainly don't want anybody telling me now I got to deal with having a spirit in me, you know. But that's what it sounds like when you guys are so quick to assume that a person that dealing with any form of depression or mental illness now also has to deal with a spirit. So I want us also to be careful about how we categorize and how we classify what we think is spiritual versus what is actual science, because a lot of stuff has to do with the chemicals and the way the brain works and the way the chemicals and the nerves and the neurons, all of that work and click inside of the brain. We'll talk about that the next time. All right. All right. So let's end with the prayer, because I just think this is a moment that's prayer worthy. And I want to end with a prayer for those that are dealing with depression or anxiety, any form of mental illness, those that are dealing with suicidal thoughts, that you don't really want to come forward because you don't want anybody to know, because sometimes we think that lessens our spirituality, makes us weak or what have you. None of that is true, okay? It just means that something happened, you know, and sometimes things just happen in life. We don't good, you know what I'm saying? And so let us pray um, for those that are dealing with some of the stuff we've talked about here tonight. All right. Father, we thank you for your loving kindness. It's been better to us than life itself. We thank you that our lips are able to praise you, that our hearts are able to bless you, that our hands are able to be lifted in your presence. We thank you, God, that wherever we are, you promise to be with us there. You promise that your Holy Spirit will lead us and guide us and to bring us into all truth. And Father, we ask that even as we go forward from this night on, God, that no secret, no stronghold would be stronger than your love for us, stronger than your truth, stronger than your grace, and stronger than your mercy. God, I decree and I declare that those that the enemy have held in bondage with these kinds of secrets, I decree and I declare that they be free from this night forward. I decree and I declare that they find great support systems. I decree and I declare that they even find great therapists if that's what they need. Father, whatever they need, put it in their pathways in the name of Jesus. And God, we're careful tonight. We'll give you praise, we give you glory, and we give you honor. Father, most of all, touch our hearts, make us more sensitive to one another. And also, God, make us more sensitive to your Holy Spirit, to where when the Spirit tells us to pray for someone or check on someone, we're not second guessing, or we're not marking time, and we're not being slowful, but we're quick to hear your voice, and we're quick to move, and we're quick to obey, and we're quick to check on one another. And Father, we'll be thankful now, and we're careful to give your name praise, glory, and honor. This we pray in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. It is in Jesus' name we pray. Amen and amen. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for staying with me the entire time. We will be back again next week. Remember, I'm only coming on once a week now because I am in the last year of school. And whew, one of my overseers said, "Ooh, they getting the butter from the duck, honey." And so it's in there. I'm in the crust of my core psychology classes, and so it's really been, classes are not hard. It's just a lot of work. Okay, and So I do desire that you guys keep me in your prayers. All right. All right. Don't forget to go over to Amazon. Make sure you order my books if you have not ordered them yet. Go over to Amazon. I want to give a shout out to Vander Williams. He is my graphic expert. He does all of my books for me. This book is on Amazon.com and it's also available on Kindle. You can download it immediately to your Kindle device or wherever you get your electronic books. Who's Guarding the House? This book is also available on Amazon.com, and this book is also available on your Kindle. You can download it immediately on your Kindle or wherever you get your electronic books. This is my third book. Don't take it personal. I wrote all of these books while I was recovering, and released all of these books while I was recovering from my first brain surgery. Okay. We'll talk about that next show. So here's another book. This one is available on Amazon.com. This one is not on Kindle yet, okay? But it's available at Amazon.com. You can get all of these books one day Prime shipping with your Prime membership. Free shipping, one day delivery. And this is my last book. Well, it's not my last book, but it's my fourth book. Prohibited Praise, Powerless Power, talking about the dangers of a non-praising church, which is you and I, all right? Not the building, but the church. All right, so all these books are on Amazon.com. You can get them. If you order tomorrow, you'll have them by Friday or Saturday. One day free shipping with your Prime membership. All right. I also, Vander Williams, he's one of my sponsors. If you let him know that you heard, he also he does stand-up banners. If you guys can see this, he made this banner for me. So he does all of my graphics. Any graphics that you see on my pages, he does them. You can find him at Vander Williams, Vander Williams, here on Facebook. He's on Instagram. Hey, if you look him up, tell him you saw, you heard me talking about him on What's on Your Mind with your host Benita Bradley. Listen, he'll give you $50 off your order. Okay. You want to get a book written, he can have your book probably ready to go within a month or so. So give him a call, check him out. Thank you, Joy. Joy is another one of my sponsors. She does all the jewelry that you see me wear, most of the jewelry that you see me wearing. She is a paparazzi representative. So shout out to her. It's JOI, or you can find her at Jazzy J's Jewelry Chest on Facebook. And I think she's on Instagram. Our other sponsor is Amazing Lash Studios. We are down to 2 cards left. You can actually go get a full classic set of lashes done. This is an $80 value. You will not pay anything out of pocket as long as you stay within the realm of what I tell you to get when you go there. They're located in the Buckhead area here in Atlanta. Sierra, thank you so much. She is hairstylist and she's a clothing stylist. She's been doing my hair lately, and she also styles me when you see me out for different events. She's the one that's styling me. So look her up. She is Sierra Garcia on Facebook. On Instagram, she is Shredded Styles on Instagram. All right. So those are all of my sponsors. Thank you guys so much. If you want to know how you can become a sponsor and have your business mentioned on my show every time I air, inbox me and let me know, and I'll let you know how you can become a sponsor of What's on Your Mind. All right. So until next time, thank you guys again for tuning in. Hey, do me a favor, share the video. Because we're after something. Share the video, and I'll see you guys next time. All right. Good night.